Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar on how to use Kahoot for product training. This webinar will be an interactive presentation, which means that we will be playing a Kahoot while giving the presentation. So first off, I'm inviting everybody to go to kahoot.it and then you can join the game. So just open your browser in another tab, enter kahoot.it, or if you have the Kahoot app, even better, and then put in the game pin, enter your email address, and then choose a nickname. And then we can get started. For anybody just joining us, I'm asking you to go to kahoot.it in your browser. It can be any browser on your phone, your tablet, your laptop that you're watching on, or use the Kahoot app and put in the game pin, since this whole webinar will be in an interactive presentation, which means that we will be playing Kahoot with slides as well. I'll give you a couple more minutes to join and then we can get started. Let's do another 10 seconds and then we can get started. If you haven't joined by then, the game pin will still be visible on the screen in the bottom. Let's get started, everyone. So product training with Kahoot. Today you're getting insights from a very special guest, which is fantastic, and I'll introduce him in a second. So this webinar will indeed be recorded and shared afterwards. And if you haven't joined the game yet, it is in the game pin in the bottom of the screen right there. I'll full screen this so you can see it. Moving on. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, just add it in the Q&A window on Zoom and we'll try to answer it live after this Kahoot. If we haven't gotten to your questions yet by the end of the webinar, just shoot us an email. I'll share the email address at the end of the webinar as well. So as I said, today we are joined by a great co-host, which is James, and he is our VP of Products at Kahoot. So this is perfect for him to talk about product training. Hi, James.
Hey, Evelyn, and hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me today. It's great to be here. As Evelyn said, I'm in the products team at Kahoot, and we pride ourselves on shipping lots of new features with Kahoot. And so we have a real need to train everybody inside Kahoot on what's coming up next. So I've got some experience to bear there, as well as I'm going to share with you some customer stories of others who've been using Kahoot, of course, for product training.
That's fantastic. So let me first give a brief introduction in what Kahoot actually is, since some of you might not have played it before, not know what it is. So first off, if this is in fact your first game, congratulations. You have now started your first Kahoot game ever. So Kahoot is the leader in gamifying learning in the workplace, which means that we make e-learning presentations and training, more specifically product training for this webinar, engaging. And we do this through Kahoots, which are online quizzes that you can create and share with all of your employees, all stakeholders in the company, anybody that you want. And these Kahoots look like this, exactly what you're looking at. You can import slides, you can add questions, you can add a lot of engaging elements, so you can actually engage the whole team of people that you're currently presenting for. So with that, after I've said this, let's see how much you actually know. So what is Kahoot? If you've never played Kahoot before, this is where you have to choose one of the 4 options.
don't forget to press submit.
Great. So most of you knew indeed that Kahoot is a game-based learning platform as well as an interactive presentation tool. So this is the reason that I've added this question, is just to show you that this is a good way to use Kahoot. You introduce a topic first, and then you ask people to recall it by adding an engaging question afterwards. So I have dropped a couple of times throughout this webinar already that we are currently doing an interactive presentation. So it is a tool to do that, as well as a game-based learning platform. So you see a lot of people have, in fact, paid attention and know this already, which is great. So with this, we see a leaderboard, Jay in first place, congrats. So now an open-ended, so here you will have to type, how are you planning to use Kahoot? What content and for whom? So just to give you an example, this could be just you say, using it for product training for our sales team. So I'll give you a couple seconds to type that answer out. This is a new question type that we've just brought out, which is great. And you can even highlight which word you want to stand out, and then I'll be able to show all of the answers on the screen after. So I can choose to either skip the answers, but of course I want to show the answers. So let's look at them. So it seems like product training is the main thing that comes up, which is great since we are currently talking about product training. So as you can see with this type of Kahoot question, you can actually get feedback from everybody. So if you're presenting on a new product topic, you can get feedback from your whole team and they can write and highlight what they find important. So this is great. And you do get this in the reports as well afterwards. With this, I'm handing it over to James, who will share all of his knowledge on Kahoot for product training.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. And I've just seen in chat, someone called Diana's just joined. You should be able to see the pin, Diana, at the bottom of the screen right now, in the middle.
I will add the game pin in the chat as well, just for
Thank you.
Easy. There you go.
Great. So let's talk about product training. And I guess a good place to start is to ask, why use Kahoot for product training at all? And this quote from one of our customers, Gerardo, who I've spoken with a couple of times on the phone and exchanged many emails from Scotiabank, I think summarizes things very well. With Kahoot, I can measure product knowledge. So what Gerardo's situation is that Scotiabank, as you're probably aware, is a large global bank. And in his region, he has multiple branches, and there's often constantly changing product information, and it's very important to get that information out to all of the employees on the ground in the branches of Scotiabank. And so he uses Kahoot to do exactly that. And he really needs to be able to measure and also share with others inside his organization the extent to which that product knowledge is actually understood by people on the ground. So I thought that was a nice quote to kick things off. If I talk a little bit more about that, we're going to go into Gerardo's customer story in a little bit more detail later, but let me just talk a little bit more about how Kahoot does that. So I believe, and when I talk to customers, this is what I tend to hear, that Kahoot can give teams a real knowledge advantage. And so by providing an engaging experience that really facilitates learning, what Kahoot does is it embeds information in teams, and teams that we hear it works particularly well for are teams who really need product knowledge to do their jobs and potentially even to achieve their targets. So we often hear Kahoot being used in the case of sales teams and also in customer care or customer support teams, where that intricate knowledge of the product is so important to the everyday role. How does Kahoot give teams that knowledge advantage? Well, there's been quite a lot of science written about this, the fact that testing, which is essentially what a Kahoot quiz question is, is a really important part of the learning process. What testing does, as opposed to just reading information or listening to information in a standard PowerPoint, is that it forces the brain to retrieve that information, and that in turn commits that information to the brain's memory. And what that does is it has the effect of combating what's been called the forgetting curve, which is that it's a slightly scary thing to say, but you tend to forget a huge amount of information within a very short space of first hearing it, unless you use techniques like testing. The stats are 50% of everything you hear, you've forgotten within an hour. So the forgetting curve is really quite steep. And by introducing questions through the format of Kahoot, you can really combat that forgetting curve. So that's kind of why conceptually Kahoot works. Why is it also particularly good for product training? Well, I guess this is not very different from many other types of training, but of course, with product training, you've got some information that you need to get across, as well as these questions that you want to ask. And what you can see in this experience that we're doing right now is it's possible with Kahoot to interleave content. It could be in the format of slides, it could be in the format of video, or images, and you can put that content in between your questions, your testing questions. And so that becomes a very effective way to deliver some content and also to make that information stick, as I've said earlier. And finally, and most importantly, people use Kahoot for product training and for all kinds of training because it's genuinely engaging. The feedback from the recipients or the employees, the trainees, who are on the other end of the experience is overwhelmingly positive. And that's because Kahoot is a group game, it's a friendly competition, it's a lot of fun competing against your colleagues in a low stakes competition. And again, we find particular teams like sales teams, for example, who by definition are often competitive, it works really, really well for them. Okay, if we could go on to the next slide, Evelyn, thank you. So I just spoke for quite a while now. A question just to summarize how much of what I said actually went in and see whether I can combat the forgetting curve with Kahoot.
Just want to highlight for everyone that this is a multiple choice question, so you can add multiple answers.
Okay, great. So a lot of people, the way this question type works is actually great for adding information like product training, because the way the point system works on this question is that you get more points the more correct answers that you get. But if you guess, you will get no points. So if 3 out of the 4 questions were right and somebody guessed all 4, they would get 0. So this one really encourages participants in a Kahoot experience to pay attention and to think carefully before answering. So a lot of people got those questions right, but I actually covered all 4 of those points in what I said previously. So thank you for listening. Congratulations to Cesar, who's now top of the leaderboard. Okay, so if that's the why, let's now talk a little bit about how you use Kahoot for product training. And the way we tend to think about this inside Kahoot is that there's 3 stages to the process of using Kahoot: create, deliver, and then improve. And we're going to spend a little bit of time going through each of these stages. And then after this interactive presentation session, Evelyn's going to actually walk you through the product itself and show you the salient features in each of these areas. So creation is an absolutely core part of the Kahoot tool. As Evelyn mentioned earlier, the magic of Kahoot is that anybody inside an organization can create engaging learning experiences in minutes. You don't need to be an instructional designer. You don't need to be an expert. Anyone can create a great learning experience. And when we look in the creator later, you'll see that we have a range of different options when you're adding questions or content to your Kahoots. One set of questions are there intended to test knowledge. There are a range of different questions where there is a correct answer and where points are awarded. And we'll talk a little bit more about those later. Another set of questions are all about collecting opinions from your audience. And that would be the poll as an example, or the open-ended question that Evelyn did earlier on in this presentation. That is one example of that. And that's fantastic, where there isn't a right answer, or crucially, as a presenter or a trainer, you want to connect with your audience so that you can tailor your messaging accordingly. And then the third type of option inside our creator is the ability to present information. And so that could be a slide like this one here, which you can import from all presentation tools, including PowerPoint and Google Slides and Keynote with Kahoot 360, which I'll talk a bit more about later. But also you can add video and images in between your questions as well. Just before I move on, I'll touch on the knowledge questions and the type of knowledge questions. We have the straightforward multiple choice quiz, which is selecting from 4 answer options. We have a true false question type, which is what it sounds like it is, which is a fairly easy one. There's only 2 options there. We then have a question type called puzzle, which is all about arranging the answers in the right order. And this is great for processes or for ranking of information as well. And then finally, we have our toughest question, which we call type answer. And that is where participants actually have to type. There is no prompt, you have to type the correct answer in to the field. And of course, that requires a different type of recall from the brain than choosing from a pre-existing list. So that is by far and away our toughest question, and great for mixing things up. Next, moving on to deliver. There are 2 ways you can experience Kahoot. The first is by presenting a live session, which is what we're doing now. Everybody plays at the same time. There's a shared screen, and there's one more slide on this in a minute that I'll go through this, but you play at the same time all together. Could be in one room, it could be remotely. The other way is that you assign a self-paced session, which means that everyone plays at their own pace, but there is still a concept of a game, and you see other players' scores, and at the end of the game, there's still a leaderboard to see who's won. The final section is about improve, and this is very important. This is where the data comes into play. I saw some people earlier answered that Kahoot is a data analytics tool. I guess as a product, I should be pleased about that. There is a very strong data element to Kahoot. I wouldn't quite say we're a data analytics tool, but there is learning analytics as part of Kahoots that can be found in our report section. And the reason that exists is so that it can help you, the people delivering product training, to improve the training experience. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So just quickly to get the basics right, a live game, this doesn't need much explanation now because you've already pinned into this game. It can be done over video conference very easily. I'd encourage you to try that if you haven't done already. You simply share your screen and you can then project this screen to everybody on the other side of the call, and everybody else pins in using a browser, a separate browser tab or a mobile phone. This is the core Kahoot game. The self-paced option, the user experience looks a little bit like this graphic on the right-hand side here. So visually, there is a difference, which is that you have the questions and answers on one device. But the key real difference is that you play this by yourself at your own pace, in your own time. And this is a fantastic game mode. It's extremely useful when you have teams who are very busy, for example. Because this is something you can do in a matter of minutes. You can start it, you can put it down and come back to it later without any problems. If you have teams in different time zones, it's fantastic as well. So it's extremely convenient game mode. And it also is by far and away the easiest way to complete training with hundreds or even thousands of players. It's clearly very logistically challenging to get hundreds or thousands of people into one space to play a game of Kahoot, and even onto a webinar type of experience that can be challenging too. So this is great also for doing training at scale. So again, to recap a little bit of what I've said. Let's talk about creating first of all. So I talked a little bit about best practices for creating Kahoots. Which of these did I mention? Great, that was looks like it was a tough one. So actually, my fault on the red one. I don't think I mentioned that, but it's an important part of the Kahoot product that you can collaborate with your team, with your teammates and colleagues in what we call a team space. Evelyn will show you this this later, but essentially that allows you to have one or more people, more than one person, creating, editing, and reviewing training content before it's delivered. So that's an important aspect that we find our customers see as very useful. Adding quiz questions after your content to make the point stick. I think we both covered that a couple of times on the call. So using different question types. I talked about the different question types, testing knowledge. We get great feedback about that, really mixes things up, makes people think, and also makes the experience more engaging. So those are both best practices. One quiz question for every 3 slides. I think that's probably a little bit high. So overall, in this presentation we're giving now, that ratio, we haven't got as high a ratio as that. I'd encourage as few slides as possible to try and keep the content load down, because people forget a lot of information, and you try and deliver at least one or more than one question for each slide. Okay, let's see how the leaderboard's looking. All right, here's the next question. This is one of the ranking questions. So I talked about the question types. Which of these question types are easiest to hardest? So put the easiest one first, and then the hardest one last. You drag and drop the answers on your device, and then press submit when you're done. Press the button when you're done, the K button when you're done. And we're going to show you this screenshot. Evelyn will walk you through the product later. You'll see that screenshot in what we call a creator. Okay, so the majority of you got that right. So congratulations. Yes, the correct answer is this. In ascending order, what we find is this is the right answer. So true and false is easiest, only 2 options. Puzzle is difficult. There are many different combinations of puzzle. And you only get points actually if you get it exactly right. There are no points for getting it partially correct. But type answer, because there are no prompts at all, is definitely the hardest question. Okay, Cesar's still on top. Safe Kids and Steen has now bumped up into 3rd place. Well done to Dylan, who's also the highest climber. All right, now talking about delivery. So we've covered now creation. I wanted to go into how to deliver product training in a little bit more detail before some more questions on it. And there's an important feature I wanted to talk about. Now you've used this feature in order to pin into this game. We call it player identifier. And you would have noticed that when you pinned into this game, you were asked to submit your email address. And the reason why this is very significant for training is because we launched this feature by popular request from our customers, who said that whilst everybody loves providing nicknames, often people use fun nicknames, it was really limiting not being able to know sometimes who is behind the nickname. And so with player identifier, that information is never shared with anyone except the host of the game. The other players never see that information. But what that allows us to do, what Kahoot to do for the product for you as a host, is then to add up the scores from players. They can use lots of different nicknames, but as long as the player identifier remains the same, then we can add up the scores across multiple games. And that allows you to track progress of individuals over time of multiple games, or even you can effectively run a training course of multiple Kahoots with the same group of people, and then you can combine all of the reports from that into an overall training course leaderboard and come up with a winner overall. So this is great for tracking users, and also it's also great for stakeholders as well, so that you can actually print out a report at the end of your game that shows this is exactly who completed this training, which can sometimes be useful. All right, I said we talk a little bit more about, come back to Gerardo and Scotiabank, because I think this is a really fantastic customer story. If you want to read in full about this, of course, this information is on our website. If you go to kahoot.com, select the At Work section, and then select Customer Stories, you will find the Scotiabank customer story there, so you can read it in full. But I found this fascinating when I first talked to Gerardo, because it's really the scale and the ambition of his product training usage within Scotiabank that I found quite amazing. So he uses Kahoot systematically for monthly company-wide tournaments in the bank. The bank is organized into zones. The zones are broken up into territories, and then there are multiple bank branches per territory. And so what Gerardo is able to do with Kahoot is send out a challenge to the entire bank each month. It's just literally, we'll demo this later. It is a click of a couple of buttons, and then you take a URL, you put it into your email client, and then you can send it out. It's that easy. And then what he does is he uses the player identifier feature that I just talked about to aggregate the games that are played across the months. And then he recognizes 3 to 4 employees each quarter for a great performance across a sequence of Kahoots. And that recognition in front of everyone, including the CEO and their peers, is fantastic motivation for the employees. And then finally, as I mentioned before, he uses player identifier to share the reports every month with the stakeholders so they can have real visibility of what's going on in product training, and back to his original quote, so that the organization, so Scotiabank, can measure product knowledge. Okay, some more questions now. So, why would you use the live Kahoot experience for product training? Again, this is a multi-select question, so the more you get right, the more points you'll get. Great. So well done, everyone. That's a pretty good effort against all of those. So all of these answers were right. I don't need to say much more. I think I've covered most of these points, but I think the key point to leave with you is that it is the most engaging experience. We hear that feedback from our customers, because you have human beings playing the same experience at the same time, even remotely. We have more and more customers telling us they're using the live Kahoot experience simply to help teams connect. Sometimes without even any training agenda. They play trivia once a week just to help a team connect, because with the challenges that we're all facing now with remote working, you need experiences like this for teams to connect and teams to feel bonded. So engagement is absolutely at the core of the live game, engagement and building team spirit. But fewer of you, I think, took away the point about delivering live training remotely. It genuinely is easy, whether you use Zoom as your tool of choice, or Microsoft Teams, or Google Hangouts. We have documentation on our website that can tell you exactly how to share your screen and host a live game of Kahoot remotely. But it's really very straightforward to do this. Okay, Christy moves up into 3rd place, but says I still has the top spots. Next, so now, why would you use self-paced challenges to deliver product training? I covered this a couple of slides ago. Let's see how much of it went in. Okay, great. Most people got that one right. I'm afraid I put in the red one is a really nasty question because I may have been a bit misleading, but I put it in because there's actually a very neat feature that I'd encourage you to check out. We'll demo it later, whereby if everyone can't be there at the same time, but most people can, you can host a live game, and then you can create a challenge that includes the scores of whoever played live, and then send that to those people who weren't able to attend. So in other words, you can extend the live experience and still have that fantastic engaging live experience as well. So sorry for the red question. It was a bit of a trick question. I can understand why you answered that. But yeah, the key points are convenience and large groups. Okay. Now, on to improve. So I talked about reports a little bit. what are the best ways that you can improve your product training using reports? The reports in Kahoot basically give you full information of exactly who has answered the questions, what they got right and what they didn't. They're only visible to the host after the game. Okay, that's very good. So well done, everyone. All of those things are right. The key points I think I would make there, and you can see this in the user experience that we'll demo later, is that what we hear from customers are the most effective thing to do with this data is to adapt your content for difficult questions. So we highlight the questions which most people got wrong. And when that happens, as a trainer, you should ask yourself, why is that? Is it my delivery? Is it the content that's not clear? Or is perhaps the question not phrased quite right? But what you should do in that situation is reflect on why that was the case and potentially change the content or your delivery in order to address that question. And then the second major use case is the green one here, to follow up with those who need help. With our player identifier feature, which is available in Kahoot 360, you can do exactly that. If someone's struggling with a lot of questions, you can provide targeted instruction after a training session and figure out where those individuals need help. But the other two are absolutely correct as well. The yellow point I would just highlight as well, for those of you who aren't so familiar with challenges, we'll demo it later again and this feature. But the point is that because a challenge may last several days, you say, I need you to complete this Kahoot in your own time and please have it done within 7 days, and you set a deadline. When the Kahoot ends, it's really fantastic if you as the host can then share the podium with everybody who participated in that game of Kahoot, because that wraps up the experience quite nicely. And again, what we're trying to do there is replicate the live game experience in an asynchronous way as much as possible. Chrissy, congratulations. We have a new leader. Okay, it's close at the top though. Right, so I've mentioned it a few times, but what is the best Kahoot plan for product training? This is our toughest question, type answer. It's the only Kahoot plan that I've mentioned so far during this webinar. There's a clue on the visuals, just came in at the end. Right. Okay, a few people got that one right. Depending on how familiar you are with the product, that's probably quite a tough question. But yes, I mentioned Kahoot 360 a few times, and 3 people did pick that up. So I'm going to talk a little bit to wrap up about Kahoot 360 and why it's our best plan for product training. Still very competitive on the top of the leaderboard. So why is it the best plan? I'm going to ask in the form of questions because I've touched on some of these features. But which of these are correct? More question types to test knowledge and collect opinion. Player identifier and organizational level reporting. Single sign-on, which is important when you're collaborating in teams and creating Kahoot together. You can onboard hundreds of people seamlessly using single sign-on. Or the self-paced challenge mode. Is it the only plan to have the self-paced challenge mode? So the green one was a bit of another trick question in that, yes, it's accurate to say it does have the self-paced challenge mode, but all of our plans have the self-paced challenge mode. Some of them have different player limits, and we can touch on that later, but that's not something that's unique about Kahoot 360. The other 3 points are correct. So it has our most advanced question types, including type answer and the open-ended poll that Evelyn asked you all at the beginning. Those are 360 questions, question types. You can import slides with Kahoot 360, and you can't do that in any other plan. And then it has the player identifier and the best reporting capabilities of any of our plans, including the ability to see at an organizational level who's creating Kahoots in your organization, who's playing the most games. So it rolls up the data from all of the people using Kahoot in your organization and presents that to the admin of an organization. Congratulations to Alyssa, who's shot up the leaderboard. I think we've got one more question for points. So, soon you'll be able to create and deliver training courses with Kahoot 360. You'll have to guess at this one because I haven't mentioned it yet. Yep, exactly. I think it would be strange if someone in my role had put that question up and the answer was false. No, but I'm super excited to be able to share this with you. In the coming weeks, it's very close now, you will be able to do exactly that. So that what that means is, as well as assigning an individual self-paced challenge, you'll actually be able to create product training courses and with a click of a button, assign those to whoever you like. So we're quite excited about that. And of course, what comes with that is the ability to therefore see someone's performance across a course. That comes all as part of the same experience, very seamless experience. And in addition, you'll also be able to, as part of a concept of a course, it doesn't have to be just Kahoots. You can also include PDFs. So you could potentially have an experience where you say, please read this short PDF and then complete this Kahoot. So there's 2 stages to the course. That is what your course is. And then that is now possible with Kahoot for the first time. So that's coming to Kahoot 360 in the next few weeks. Final question, not for points this one, before we get to the podium. Would you like to find out more about Kahoot 360? Great, that's fantastic. I'm really pleased to hear that. We'll be in touch after the webinar. So the podium, Cesar, had a great start, but well done for finishing 3rd. Safe Kids. And the winner, Chrissy, congratulations.
Amazing.
And well done to Alyssa and Jackie.
Fantastic. So now that we've done this part of the webinar, is there anything else, James, that you want to cover before I go into the demo?
No, I think let's go into the demo. If you can take us through the product demo now, Evelyn, and we can pick up the Q&A after that.
Perfect. So let's look at the actual platform. So when you log into your Kahoot account, you come into the home screen, which is this. And here you've got a couple of quick overviews. You've got your challenges that are currently running, your Kahoots, and your latest reports. So those are the most important ones. Plus you've got some information from us, like the latest blogs with tips and how to sign up on webinars. And we are doing these weekly. So if you want to learn about any other topics, click on it, look at which ones are upcoming and join them. So when you're creating a Kahoot, you click on the create button in the top navigation bar. And when I do that, I get 2 options. I can either start from scratch and create a new Kahoot, or I can use one of the pre-made templates. And I do recommend that you look at some of these. If you are looking to create a Kahoot about one of these topics, it's super easy to start from those. But for this specific use case, I'm going to start from scratch. So now I have the option to add all of the different question types that James talked about in his presentation earlier. So the quiz one is, as you can see, just very standard, the one with the 4 answer options. And you can toggle if you want to have it just 1 answer or if it's multi-select. And we've done a lot of multi-select Kahoots questions so far, so you know how these work. Then we've got the true or false. We've got type answer, which is the most difficult question type, as nobody gets any prompts and they just have to type it from memory, which is an amazing feat for you to really see if people got it at the end of the training. So just add a question type there, type answer one, ask a specific question and see if people have understood what you have been instructing. Then there's a puzzle one. Yes?
Could we just take the question? Alyssa had a question
Yes.
on type answer. It's perfect time to take that.
For
the question was, do all answers have to be exact, like all words and punctuation? There's 2 answers to that. So punctuation is ignored, and so is caps, so you don't have to worry about that. And then you can add other accepted answers, which Evelyn can demo now.
So you can add any answers, which is what we did with the 360 question. Since there are multiple ways to write it, you can write just 360, Kahoot 360. You can write the number out completely. So you can add up to 4 different answer options. I hope that answers your question, Alyssa. So then moving on to the opinion questions. You've got your poll, which just looks like a normal Kahoot question, but without any points. Your word cloud, which is a great visualization of all of the opinions of people. And then open-ended, which is the one that we did earlier, where you can ask people to give a more in-depth feedback on what you're presenting. And then, of course, you've got slides. And when I click on slides, you see that there's a new pop-up that comes up. I can choose to either create a slide natively in Kahoot or even choose to import my own slide deck. And this is something that James talked about earlier. And as you can see, there's a ton of different file formats that are supported. You can import your PowerPoints, your Keynote, or even just in Google Slides, click to download it as a PDF and import that instead. And then you can drag and drop everything in the correct order that you want by just clicking and dragging, and all your slides will just appear as you are creating, which is an amazing feature. And this is a great way for you to actually create your whole training. So one more thing that I do want to say about slides. If you create your own slide in Kahoot, you have the option to add images and also YouTube link, which you can also add in other question types. But here in your slide, it is especially important to add YouTube links to videos if you have training content, if you are planning to send these Kahoots out as self-paced Kahoot challenges, as you will not be there to instruct people since everybody is playing this on their own time outside of any lessons, outside of any live settings. If you add a YouTube link with all of the information, then this is a great way for you to instruct people as they're doing it at their own pace. So with that, you've seen the whole creator, all of the different question types. You can click around everything and figure it out as you go. It's very self-explanatory. So when you have created your Kahoot, it will come under Kahoots. So we are now in the Kahoots section in the top navigation bar. And if you click on My Kahoots, you have every Kahoot that you yourself have created. And as you can see, product training with Kahoot, that is the Kahoot that we have just played. And if I click on this, I can get an overview of all of the slides, click on show answers, even see all of the answers of the questions that I've added. And this is a good way for you to just have a quick overview on what type of Kahoot it is, what you've added. And from here, you can click to play. So here in the left side, you have a play button. And here you have 2 different options. The ones that James has talked about, you can either play a live game, which is under present, so it says live session, or you can assign a challenge. So when assigning a challenge, just click on it. You can choose your deadline by what time people have to actually complete this challenge. Then you have the option to put a timing. You can even choose to not put a deadline, and this is something that is only available in a couple of plans. So if you get 360, you have access to this as well. So this challenge will just continuously go on. But if you do want a deadline, as there is a specific timing that you're doing your training, choose that one. Choose if people have to put in their email address under player identifier. Remember, this is where you entered your email address before choosing a nickname when entering the game. And you click on create. And with this, you get redirected to our reports page. And here you will actually be able to see all the questions and answers come in real time. So you can follow who has already edited all of their information and has started the game and who still needs to do it. And if you want to share this Kahoot with your employees, with your trainees, you can choose to either copy the challenge link and send this out in the email or any messenger tool. You can send out the game pin itself, or you have the options to even share via Teams or any social media that you want. And this is coming soon. You will be able to assign it via email as well. So if you click on assign, you can enter email addresses and this will be automatically sent to them so they can start training with this. So with this, I just want to check the report that we just created. So now I click on on reports in the top navigation bar, and I see the game that we've just played, which was product training with Kahoot. You see it's finished, and you see that it was a live game that had the player identifier actually enabled. If I click on this, I get the whole overview of how difficult it was, if we had any difficult questions, and it seems like we had a lot of them. So it means that a lot of people can replay this as well. And I even get the option to create a new Kahoot with only these specific difficult questions. And when we talk about difficult questions, this means that there are less than 35% of participants who have answered this correctly, which means that this is something that either we need to instruct upon again, or we can cover again in the next training, or just something that we want to create a new Kahoot on and send reminders and just get everybody to look over this again. Then you get an information on who needs help. This means people that have answered less than 35% correct, and you get an answer about everybody who didn't finish it. And this is the thing that James talked about earlier, a way for you to play this game with people that haven't been here. If you click on play again, I again get the option to either play a live game or play self-paced Kahoot. And there's a check mark here if new players play against scores from a previous game. So if I click this and assign a challenge, people can just play this Kahoot against everybody who has already played this, which means that if you have people that haven't joined this webinar and do want to play the Kahoot again, if you click create new, you can just play this again at any time. And you can share the podium. If I click on view podium, I went to the challenge that I just created. Apologies for that. So I go back to reports and to the game that we had just played. If I click on the podium, then here you see it again. You see that Chrissy won. So James, have I covered all of the things in our platform?
Yes, I think that is that's perfect. Thank you, Evan. Yes.
Fantastic. Great. So with that, let's look at the Q&A. There's a couple of questions I see. So there is a question, is this presentation available offline? So this presentation that I have created and that we have presented will be available as a recording that you can watch afterwards, and you will get an email about that. Then there's a question about how you can upgrade from 20 people to 50 people. James, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So that's super straightforward. When you log into the Kahoot platform, you'll see in the top navigation bar, there's an upgrade now button. And if you have 20 people, you're on standard. All you need to do is select pro from that page, and you can upgrade in a couple of clicks. So it's very, very quick and easy to do.
Great. Then there's a question, will a training course feature allowance for videos? So as I showed while showing the creator, you can add all YouTube videos that you want to all of the question types. Look at the next question. When using my phone only, is there a way to look at the questions? If you're playing a Kahoot challenge, you can see both questions and answers on your own screen. If you meant this as in you're following a webinar on your phone and trying to play Kahoot, I recommend you have two different devices, as on a phone, it's very difficult to do split screen. But if you're on a laptop, you can just split screen between following the live cast and looking at your controller that you answer on. There's a question, if the live attendants had discussions, does the challenge still have the voice portion? So I'm guessing with this, since this question came in during us telling you about how to create a challenge from the game that you have just done, the game just takes a snapshot of the specific game that you've played. It's not the actual video conferencing that you've done before. So it just shows the game, but if you want to add any other information, you can add any other questions and create a new challenge from that. Then there is another question on, if we would like to use this for schools, can we remove or disable the player identifier? James, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. It's not available, player identifier, in any of our schools' plans, and the reason for that is data privacy issues for minors. So the short answer is you can't get it with one of our school plans. If you have a business plan, it's also possible to toggle off player identifier. As the admin of a business account, you can turn it, have it on by default for all of your other hosts in your team space. You can also choose what the default field to collect is. So email is the one by default. You could change that. Many of our customers have employees they want to train who don't have email addresses, so they might use a mobile number or an employee number instead. So it could be any unique identifier, but you could change that as well. So there's plenty of flexibility to turn off player identifier.
Great. Then there's one more question on how to use it with Microsoft Teams. Well, Patrick, you are in luck, because next week we're doing a webinar on literally this, how to use it with Microsoft Teams. In the meantime, we do have a lot of information on the website that can get you started in 2 seconds. Then the question is if the training course are an LMS, James.
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the question, but I guess the functionality is somewhat similar to some functionality that a learning management system has. It's not, we wouldn't describe Kahoot exactly as a learning management system, but we've again introduced this functionality by popular demand from our customers, and we recognize that it can be extremely useful. For example, for smaller companies who don't have a learning management system to deliver important mandatory training, we can see there's a real need for that. And indeed for larger companies like Scotiabank, they might well have an LMS, but the Kahoot experience is more engaging than a standard learning management system. So there's value for it for them as well. So it's when the content proposition that LMSs tend to have is not something that Kahoot has currently. The essence of Kahoot is that you make your own learning content, whereas many learning management systems tend to offer a content marketplace as part of their offering. So there are some major areas where Kahoot is not like a learning management system, but the course is, I guess, somewhat similar.
Great, thank you. So then there's one more question from Danny. If you put people at a disadvantage due to network issues when you're playing a video conferencing game. I have played a lot of video conferencing games in the last times because of Corona. And the one thing that I recommend to enable this is either ask your everybody to be plugged in on actual Ethernet, use 4G, or just add enough time for people to see the question. So when you're creating your questions, you can change the question timer. So just add 30 or 60 seconds and people will be able to see the question before it times out anyways. And if you are really worried about connectivity, you can always play a Kahoot challenge and just assign that instead, since that is not a live game and people will be able to play it on their own time and even just pause it and come back to it whenever they have time or internet again. Then James, another question for you. For a company event, is the Gold event package the same features as Kahoot 360?
Yes, Dylan, it is exactly. The key difference is that it is a one-off plan. So if you're only planning on using Kahoot once for that event, then it's the plan to go for because it's cheaper than 360 Pro. However, if you are thinking about hosting more than one event, Kahoot 360 Pro is exactly the same functionality as the event package, and you can host as many as you like. And actually, just apologies, I need to correct myself there. The silver event package is exactly the same as Kahoot 360 Pro. So you have all the same features and you can host events of up to 2,000 people. What uniquely you get with the gold event package is some consultancy, a 1 hour of consultancy to help you on board with a product and understand how best to use the product at your event. And that is unique to gold. So you don't get that in Kahoot 360. So if you're interested in that consultancy, then gold is the way to go. If you already have Kahoot 360, you can contact us and we can help you get access to that consultancy without paying the full cost of gold, because that wouldn't be appropriate.
Great. Then the last question is, if I get 360, will I be able to activate my old Kahoot profile? You can upgrade from any account that you already have. So it's very easy. Just log into your old Kahoot profile that you have and click upgrade and choose whichever plan that you want. So that was all of the questions. So first, before we go, let me share a couple of resources that we do want to share with you guys before you go, so you know where to find more information. So I'll share my screen again. And let's dive into resources. So as James mentioned earlier, we've got a ton of success stories, which means that we have done articles and videos and everything to walk you through how other companies use Kahoot. So if you are interested in seeing how other companies use Kahoot for product training, or even any other type of training, sales, compliance, anything, just go to our websites, click on customer stories, and you'll be able to read the big names that are using Kahoot and how they're using it. Then we've got a lot of short video guides. This is me, so you can see that these are hosted by me. And in a couple of minutes, I just walk you through specific features. It's very easy, like 1 to 2 minutes, and you'll know how to use a specific feature. And we've got a very, very extensive FAQ on our support center. So if you haven't found your answers in either customer stories or in the videos, just go to support.kahoot.com and you can find literally anything that you're looking for. But in case that you still haven't found it, you can always email us, and I will share the email address at the end. So there's been a couple of remarks in the questions and in the chats on which plan is perfect for you. So as you can see, there's a couple of different plans that we have, and Kahoot 360 is the one that we have been talking about the most. And all of these different plans have different player limits. So first off, you need to ask yourself with how many people that you are going to play Kahoot. And just to reiterate, the only person that needs a Kahoot account is you, the person who starts the game. The players that you're playing with, they don't need a Kahoot account, but you need to look at how many players you can have in your game. So if you're looking just small games, 20, then standard is fine. If it's 50, pro. If you want to have just 100, then Kahoot 360 plus. But if you want to have the full 2000, if you're planning to play with a lot of people at the same time, that's the way to go. And then there's a lot of other information, as in if you want to be able to have player identifier, then you need to go through 360 Pro. If you want to have all of the interactive presentation features, those are also only on 360. And then if you want to have access to all the different question types, you can just click on 360 and get everything. And then the email address that you can contact us with. We will contact you after this webinar with the recording of the webinar and some more information. But if you want to contact us, just send us an email at business@kahoot.com. You can find all of the information on our pricing on kahoot.com/business/pricing, and follow us on LinkedIn, because I post all of the latest and greatest there, and you can get all of the new information on all of the upcoming and released features. Anything else to add, James?
No, I think that's a wrap for today.
Perfect. Thank you so much for attending. And I hope you learned a lot about how to use Kahoot for product training, and hope to see you in future webinars as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining, everyone.